This movie begins with the daily morning activities in and around the Lily family restaurant. Lolly and her dad, Marty, run the restaurant. It's been this way since Irene, Lolly's mom, passed away. The restaurant is also known for a certain breakfast menu, but Lolly wants a change in it. She decides to spice up the breakfast menu by adding avocado toast to it. She makes the meal and asks that her dad check it out, but her dad refuses to do so. He's not like Lolly, who prefers organic food. She says she only wants to make their meals healthier, but her dad stands his ground. He then pulls rank. As the head cook, he won't accept a change in the menu. He wants to keep the same menu his wife put together. There's a back and forth between them until Aunt Gert, Lolly's maternal aunt, shows up. She hears that the bone of contention is avocado toast, and she quickly mentions that she loves it. Lolly, with a smile on her face, hands over the plate of avocado toast to her. Aunt Gert tastes the meal and confesses that it's yummy. Lolly brings her dad's attention to Aunt Gert's assessment of the meal, but he doesn't care. He thinks that Aunt Gert would eat anything anyway. He also remarks that Aunt Gert doesn't pay for her meals. Aunt Gert's only response is that she isn't paying for any meal at her family's restaurant. Lolly complains to Aunt Gert about Marty's defiance of changing the restaurant menu. A mail arrives, and it's from the IRS. The restaurant has defaulted in payments, but Marty assures that he's on top of the matter. Aunt Gert encourages Lolly. She tells her that all will be fine in no time, but Lolly wallows in disbelief. Away from the restaurant, Rory, Lolly's childhood ex and neighbor, is seeing his daughter Sam off. Rory is a doctor for a hockey team, a successful one at that. Beth, his ex-wife, has come to pick up their daughter for the holiday season. Sam wants Rory to come with them. She complains that the hockey season is over and the team won't need him for a while. Rory explains why he can't go on the trip with them. Sam hasn't fully understood the implications of her parents' split. Rory admonishes Sam to have all the fun while she's with her mom. They hug and Sam goes over to her mom, who's been waiting in the car. At the restaurant, Marty finds ice popsicles in the refrigerator. He hasn't put them there, so he meets Lolly to ask how they got there. Before he even asks, he has one in his mouth. Lolly tells him that the popsicles are a result of her experiments with Eve's remaining products. She's just trying her hands on something new. Lolly puts it to Marty that he likes the popsicles, but Marty would rather not comment. He says what matters most is that the popsicles are taking up too much space in the deep freezer. Lolly reminds him that he's the one who ordered too much cod from Tommy, hence the deep freezer being full. He argues that even though they won't need that much cod, the prices were lower than usual, and that's why he ordered them. Lolly doesn't care about that. She wants them returned and the money refunded. Marty makes a case for Tommy. The man needs the money. When Marty leaves, Lolly receives a message from her sister Daphne to remind her of their meeting by the weekend. Rory is spending the next few days with his parents. They welcome him warmly and introduce Kirby, their temporary foster dog, to him. His parents immediately want him to spend some time with Kirby. They feel dogs have a way of making things better. Rory has no issues with that, but suggests that Kirby needs extra training. They go into the house and Rory's dad reminds him that Lolly still lives in the neighborhood. He hopes that Rory and Lolly find the time to link up. Later in the day, Lolly goes over to the town's market. She meets Eve, who already has her goods out. Eve is happy to hear that Lolly made popsicles, and after tasting one, she likes it. Lolly reveals her dad's reaction to the avocado toast, and Eve notices that Lolly isn't in the best frame of mind at the moment. Lolly says she's fine. She says she's only looking to find herself. Eve feels Lolly is finding herself simply because Rory has come back to town, but Lolly ignores her. Rory finds his parents getting ready to go out. They ask that he join them, but he declines. He says he'd rather go for a walk. Kirby barks at the word walk, meaning Rory has to take it on a walk whenever the word is mentioned. Rory reluctantly accepts to walk Kirby. At the marketplace, Lolly is walking by when Kirby runs into her and she falls. Rory rushes to help her stand, and that's when they notice each other. Lolly pretends to be unaware that Rory was in town prior. She teases that it must be Rory's hologram. The meeting is awkward, both of them stuttering. They're excited to see each other but can't seem to navigate their emotions and mutter sensible statements. Meeting someone whom you once loved and dated can bring too many emotions to process. Rory then finds a way to leave Lolly's presence as quickly as possible. After he leaves, Lolly drops on a chair and makes a face, like she's reminiscing about good times from the past. Eve meets Lolly and reveals that she saw her talking to Rory. She understands why Lolly feels a certain type of way. Lolly complains that Rory didn't even try to hold a conversation. She feels that Rory isn't interested in talking to her, but Eve tells her that might not be the case. She reminds Lolly that Rory has just gone through a divorce and must be having a hard time. The last time Rory had a conversation with Rory, it wasn't a rosy one. It was heated, and they broke up. Seeing him with his wife and kid over the last few years hasn't helped Lolly either. She complains that her life has been stuck. She's sad that Rory left and then came back to meet her doing the same things. Eve suggests activities they should do together to cheer her up, but Lolly has too much on her plate. She has to finish the paperwork at the restaurant and help her sister the next day. Eve hugs her and Lolly leaves. The next day, Lolly and Daphne are cleaning out their late mom's stuff. They come across the diary Lolly made in 7th grade. They find a page where Lolly depicts herself running a restaurant exactly the way she wishes. This is in stark contrast with how her life is presently. Daphne reveals that she wanted them to clear out their mom's things in time. She's expecting to go to Bali as a yoga instructor. Lolly wonders why she'd want to travel that far to teach yoga. She's also wondering why Daphne keeps switching jobs, but fails to find a marketing job, something she has a degree in. Daphne feels belittled and reminds Lolly that Lolly isn't their mom. She goes on to tell Lolly that she'd rather not have a diary full of regrets, of course, like Lolly. She then storms out after. Aunt Gert walks in. Lolly is full of regrets, and Aunt Gert offers to help her. She tells Lolly that she's been holding on to something for a while and she thinks the time is right to hand it over to her. Aunt Gert hands over a treasure chest to Lolly. Lolly calls it a hope chest, but Aunt Gert assures her that it contains more than hope. Aunt Gert opens the box for Lolly, and Lolly finds 4 lemon drops in it. This confuses Lolly as she wonders how lemon drops would make her life better. Aunt Gert tells her that they aren't ordinary lemon drops. The lemon drops can show her the life she wishes for and give her the power to choose it. Lolly still doesn't understand what Aunt Gert is talking about and is only giving a listening ear because it is Aunt Gert speaking. Aunt Gert urges her to take 1 lemon drop before she goes to bed, then say aloud something she'd love to experience and possibly change. Either a regret or a path she'd have taken differently. Anytime she does this, she'd have the opportunity to live a day as it would have been if she made that choice. She'll come back to her normal life when she wakes up and will remember her experience too. The first 3 lemon drops will guarantee her return, but the 4th one will guarantee that life is a permanent one. By implication, this also means that the memories in that reality are the only ones she'd have. She's still in doubt, but Aunt Gert advises her that if she doesn't give it a try, she might regret it. At bedtime, Lolly struggles with the idea surrounding the lemon drops but later succumbs. She takes it and says the word toast. She wakes up in another life. Before she can fully register her surprise, her phone rings. It's India, Lolly's restaurant manager. India understands that it's Lolly's day off, but needs her at the moment. Lolly is still trying to wrap her head around this new reality. She notices her apartment is fully furnished, and her closet is something she's never even dreamt of. India tells her that Ed from Michelin is at her restaurant. This also means that Lolly's restaurant is on the verge of getting a 2nd star. Everything is happening very fast for Lolly. She asks India where they can meet, and this surprises India. Lolly's perceived awkwardness prompts India to want to call a doctor. Lolly asks India for the 2nd time where she'd meet her, and India answers. Apparently, in this life, Lolly has a restaurant named Toast, and she's built it to become a big one for the past 7 years. Lolly arrives at the restaurant and customers treat her like a celebrity. She meets India and quickly expresses delight in meeting her. This surprises India. India begins telling her of the new milestones the restaurant has hit. Lolly can't wait to tell her dad, but India advises that she wait till after her dad's treatment. India takes Lolly to the Michelin guys, and they are honored to meet Lolly. They confess how much they love the avocado toast and award the restaurant its 2nd star, to the applause of other customers. As she walks away from that table, Nicola, the restaurant's chef, wants to have a word with Lolly, but Lolly is very concerned about her dad. She puts a call through to him, but it goes to voicemail. She then calls Daphne, who is working on the Toast's new banner. When Lolly asks, Daphne tells her that their dad is having therapy with Ramona, their stepmom. Everything is new to Lolly, and she's finding it hard to understand this reality. Marty is recovering from a stroke, hence the therapy program. Daphne is quite shocked that Lolly is calling to know these things, as she only ever calls about work. Lolly still wants to talk, but Daphne hangs up the phone. Lolly receives some messages from a dating site. As she goes through them, she gets a text from Rory, reminding her that he'd be visiting the restaurant, so she replies. She meets Nicola, who complains of shortages in some supplies. Lolly gives some ideas she'd want them to implement, but Nicola isn't game. Nicola takes off her apron and welcomes Lolly to become the new chef. Still extremely confused, she quickly begs Nicola to take back her apron. India notices how off Lolly has been and advises that Lolly go home. Much later, Lolly checks that she's in good shape and goes over to Rory. They're both happy to see each other, but Lolly doesn't see what's coming. As they catch up, Emma walks in majestically. Before Lolly's eyes, Emma meets Rory and kisses him on the lips. It dawns on Lolly that her expectations have been cut short. Emma is happy to see Lolly. They thank Lolly for reserving a table for them, and Lolly forces a smile in return. She has to act like all is well with her. Back at her office, Lolly goes through some paperwork. Rory sends an appreciation text, with a photo depicting how the evening went. She obviously can't have Rory in this life. India enters Lolly's office and seeks permission to leave. Lolly soon falls asleep and wakes up to normalcy. She runs out and hugs her dad, excited to see Marty in good shape. She also apologizes to Daphne for being harsh on her the other day, and this surprises Daphne. The next stop for Lolly is Aunt Gert. Her lemon drop is indeed magical. She finds Aunt Gert and tells her all that has happened. She reveals that it wasn't quite how she had imagined it, as she was very stressed, and the restaurant was her life. When Aunt Gert asks her if she'd rather choose that life, she becomes skeptical. That life comes with mixed emotions, and she doesn't know if that's what she wants. Aunt Gert remarks on how she got hold of the lemon drops. A woman named Esmeralda gave them to her after she suffered a heartbreak in her early 20s. Aunt Gert says that the most important part of using the lemon drops is the lessons one gets to learn from the experience, and also the decisions that follow. Lolly picks up a framed picture of her mom and rhetorically asks what her mom thinks. Aunt Gert advises Lolly to ask her mom to use the lemon drops. At the restaurant, Lolly is telling Eve how her night went. The more Lolly explains, the greater the confusion for Eve. Eve holds that Aunt Gert might have put something in Lolly's candy that has possibly caused hallucinations. Lolly thinks she could make things right, and she wants to start by talking things out with Rory. She'd also have a conversation with her dad concerning finance. Eve then brings out a wad of cash and hands it over to Lolly. It's Lolly's income from the popsicle sale. Eve tells her that people love the popsicles, and she'd advise that Lolly continues making them. Lolly has a conversation with Marty. Property tax has increased, and Marty assures that they'll pay it. Selling the place is never an option, as Lolly's mom started the restaurant and the place will stay in business for as long as possible. Later that day, Lolly meets up with Rory by the lakeside. They inquire about each other's well-being and try to catch up. Lolly then begins apologizing for the manner things ended between them. She accepts that she overreacted. Rory feels the apology isn't necessary as he's moved past that. Lolly confirms that she hasn't moved past it though and explains why she reacted that way. Rory holds that even though he was hurt at that time, he has gotten over it and has forgiven her. They share a side hug, and then Rory gets a text from his parents. It's time for him to leave. Lolly thanks him for meeting up with her and invites him to stop by the restaurant anytime. It's bedtime. Lolly takes the second lemon drop and says the word mom. She wakes up in another life where she's the regional manager of a food supply company, a job she actually wouldn't prefer. She leaves her room and finds her mom, leading to a long hug that surprises her mom. She's glad she's finally meeting her mom again. They plan their day, and since it's Martys' birthday, Lolly suggests they make lemon drops pie. Lolly's mom goes ahead to tell her that Daphne is in Bali, and Aunt Gert is there with her. Lolly is shocked that her mom would allow Daphne to make such a choice. Her mom reminds her that everyone should be allowed to make their own choices. She goes on to tell Lolly how much Daphne loves and idolizes her. The lemon drop pie is ready, and they drive to the restaurant that has now been put out for lease. Lolly's mom talks about how Marty tried to save the restaurant even till his demise. It dawns on Lolly that in this life, Marty is no more. They eat the pie in honor of Marty. At the summer picnic, Rory shows up and Irene pushes Lolly to go say hi to Rory. In this life, Rory and Lolly didn't get into a relationship. They were just schoolmates and neighbors. Rory was her childhood crush. They catch up on each other's lives, and after a while, Rory gets a call, so they bid each other goodbye. Lolly goes back to her mom. She complains that the conversation didn't go as she expected, as Rory can't even clearly remember her. Lolly wants her mom to advise her on the path to choose, and her mom tells her not to chase instant happiness. She tells Lolly to pursue bliss and enjoy life as it comes. What matters most is facing her life with honesty. It's morning, and Aunt Gert notices the glow on Lolly's face. She guesses that Lolly saw her mom, and Lolly confirms it. Lolly wants to know if Aunt Gert chose a life the lemon drop gave her, but her aunt doesn't divulge. Rory pops up at the restaurant just as Lolly offered earlier. He meets Marty, who is excited to see him. On the other hand, Lolly takes another batch of her special popsicle to Eve. Eve is interested in hearing how her lemon drop magic has worked the previous night. Lolly shares how she met her mom. She also shares how Rory has no interest in her life. They conclude that a lifetime where Lolly didn't push Rory away could help Lolly's cause. It's Martys' birthday, so Lolly takes a bowl of lemon drop pie to Marty at the restaurant. Rory joins her in singing a happy birthday song to Marty. Lolly then joins Rory at his table, and they begin chatting. Rory talks about his divorce and how things are with him at the moment. Lolly is open to always having a chat with him. It's time for Rory to walk Kirby again, and he invites Lolly to accompany him. Rory and Lolly are walking the dog when Lolly begins talking about the past. She's still sad that she didn't make things right when they dated. Rory wants them to move on from the past, and Lolly agrees. Rory's very much focused on his life and his daughter. When Rory asks, Lolly infers that she has had relationships, but they aren't like the one she had with him. They eventually go their separate ways. Rory gets home and realizes that he's left his phone at the restaurant. He goes back to get it and finds Marty immobile, possibly suffering from a stroke. Rory immediately calls for help. The same night, Lolly takes the third lemon drop and mentions Rory's name. She then wakes up in another life with Rory also waking up beside her. They are married and have kids. Marrying Rory in this life is surreal. She goes over to the restaurant but isn't impressed. Daphne works there too, and this surprises her as she expects her to be in Bali. When Lolly asks, Daphne says she can't go to Bali and then live her life getting guilt-tripped by Lolly for not supporting the family business. Lolly's popsicles are now a thing, and Eve usually comes to collect supplies. She's back home and finds out that Rory is a medical equipment sales rep. Rory is relying on a deal to go through that evening so they can pay for their anniversary dinner. At dinner, Lolly asks certain questions to know what her reality in this life is like. Rory tells her they've been married for 10 years. Rory also hasn't studied to become a sports doctor, and that's why he's selling medical equipment. Rory admits that this is the sacrifice he has to make in life, and he is very happy with Lolly and their daughters. Lolly finds out that Rory isn't entirely happy. She begins hearing her name from a distance and figures it's Aunt Gert calling. Back to normalcy, everyone is at the hospital. Rory explains to Lolly that Marty has suffered a stroke. This means that Marty needs to stay away from the kitchen and seek therapy for his physical well-being. After wishing him a speedy recovery, Marty's family concludes that the restaurant would have to be closed temporarily. It's a new turn for Lolly as she'd have to do a lot to get Marty in shape. She's already exhausted from the thought of it. Rory encourages her and tells her to rest for the day, as the work ahead is tedious. Lolly enters the house and finds Aunt Gert. She informs Aunt Gert that the life where she's married to Rory seems perfect only at the beginning. The latter part wasn't something she looked forward to because Rory did not pursue his dreams. She wants Aunt Gert to help her make a decision, but Aunt Gert declines. The decision is solely hers. She laments about all three options having flaws, none perfect like she wanted. At the restaurant, Lolly discusses with Eve and tells her the state of things. Lolly is considering letting the restaurant go as she doesn't want to run it to the ground. Eve has a friend who can come get the property appraised if that's what Lolly wants. Lolly hasn't made a final decision though. The coming days will tell. Rory has compiled a list of physical therapists for Marty. A message pops up on Rory's computer. It's a picture of a property that Rory is considering buying. Lolly notices that things seem quite perfect for Rory. He's pursuing his dream and doing well for himself. She asks if there's anyone named Ramona on the list, and Rory confirms there is. She wants them to go with Ramona as the therapist. Marty is back home and can't wait to get back to making meals. Lolly informs him that the restaurant has been closed for 2 weeks and that the road to his recovery is a very long one. Marty understands that Lolly would want to sell the place. He tearily agrees, but laments over not being able to keep his wife's legacy. Lolly and Daphne assure him that their mom would have wanted them to do the right thing. Ramona comes in to begin Martys therapy. That night, Lolly doesn't take the lemon because she hasn't made a decision yet. Rory and Lolly are at the lakeside. Rory's time in town has elapsed and he's leaving soon. They agree that they'll miss each other. Rory wishes that Lolly could come with him. As much as Lolly likes the idea, she thinks the timing is wrong. She has to get her life together and be there for her dad. It's a tough one for both of them, but they have to be mature about it. They decide to throw a party to celebrate the restaurant and bid it farewell. Friends and well-wishers gather around and have fun. Lolly sees Daphne is excited while going through her phone. When Lolly asks, Daphne tells her that she's been accepted to go to Bali as a yoga instructor. Lolly is thrilled, and Daphne wonders why. She's been against Daphne's going to Bali. Daphne contemplates declining so she could help, with things being different now. Lolly disagrees. She wants Daphne to go ahead and accept it. They look over and find their dad subtly flirting with Ramona. This delights them, and they hope that the spark turns into a flame. Lolly sits with Eve and voices that she'll venture fully into Lolly's Pops and make it a big brand. While they go on about that, Daphne brings a parcel from Rory. It's a neck piece and a side note telling Lolly how awesome he thinks Lolly is. This excites Lolly, and she walks over to Aunt Gert. She opines that she'd rather stay in her present life than choose any of the other lives the lemon drops gave her. She believes it would be selfish of her to choose a life that hampers the dreams of her loved ones. Aunt Gert is pleased with her. She mentions that she did the same thing. She never took the last drop. She also tells Lolly that the lemon drops she took were meant for Irene, but she refused to take any of them. Irene always preferred her life the way it was. Aunt Gert acknowledges that Lolly takes after her. She only gave her the drops because Lolly was finding it difficult to create a clear path for herself. Days later, Rory decides to go fishing by the side of his new house. Shortly, Lolly walks up to him. He's surprised at the visit. Lolly has taken the 7-hour drive just to pass a message to Rory. She acknowledges their decision to focus on their respective lives but states that she's open to having a relationship with Rory. She's ready anytime Rory is, and professes that she loves Rory. Rory doesn't hesitate to kiss her. Kirby runs into them and pushes them into the river. This signals the beginning of Lolly's bliss.